The DNA test arrived on a quiet Saturday night. I thought it would be a fun family thing. Just a little peek into our ancestry. But when the results loaded, it said my husband wasn't our daughter's father. You know, if you had told me a few years ago that a small white envelope could destroy everything I loved, I would have laughed. I would have said, "Oh, come on, families don't fall apart over paper." But they do, and mine did. Before that night we were ordinary. Beautifully, peacefully ordinary. We had Sunday dinners that smelled like rosemary and laughter. My husband would hum while washing dishes, and my daughter would tease him for being off-key. My son always sat closest to me, pretending he didn't still like when I cut his pie into perfect little squares. Our home was full of sound, the kind of everyday noise you never think to miss until it's gone. The hum of conversation, the low rumble of the TV someone forgot to turn off, the creak of the stairs under familiar footsteps. I thought we were happy. Or maybe I just believed that happiness was whatever didn't hurt. My husband and I had been together more than 20 years. We'd built a life brick by brick. A modest home, 2 kids, a few good friends. We weren't perfect, but we were ours. My daughter Emma, she was my wild one. Brilliant, brave, a little too honest for her own good. And Nathan, my son, he was the quiet one. Steady, kind, the sort of man who listens before he speaks. Like his father used to be. We had our routines. Every morning, I made breakfast, kissed my husband goodbye at the door, and waved as he backed the car out of the driveway. Every evening, I'd light the same candle in the kitchen window. A silly little habit, but it was my way of saying, we're safe. We're home. Life was simple, predictable, and I remember thinking, if this is all I ever have, it's enough then. One evening, everything changed, and I didn't even see it coming. It started with a conversation at dinner. Emma had been talking about one of her friends, how she'd taken one of those online DNA tests to trace her ancestry. She was so excited about it, said it helped her understand herself better, where she came from. "You and Dad should do one," she'd said, laughing. "It'll be fun. We can see if I get my stubbornness from your side or his." We laughed. I remember that. I laughed. And my husband said, "Only if it's free." That was his way of saying yes without saying yes. So, a week later, the kits arrived. Tiny boxes with neat instructions and a promise, find out who you really are. I didn't think much of it. It felt like a game, a novelty. We each did our part. Swab, seal, send. It was almost funny, spitting into a tube to learn what you already thought you knew. Then life went on. Weeks passed. We forgot about it. Until the results came back. It was a Saturday evening. I was folding laundry when I heard my husband's voice from the living room. "Hey," he called. "The results are in." He sounded amused. Almost like a kid checking a lottery ticket. I came to stand behind him, wiping my hands on a towel. The screen showed colored charts, names, percentages. He scrawled, mumbling something about Scottish ancestry. Then he frowned. "What's wrong?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the screen. "Something's off," he said finally. "It says Emma's not a full match." I laughed again lightly. "Oh, these things aren't always accurate." He didn't laugh. I leaned closer. The words were right there, bold and certain, possible relationship, not parent-child. For a moment my brain refused to understand. Then I felt my stomach drop. He turned to me, confusion and something darker in his eyes. "What does this mean?" I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. And that was the first time I realized. Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive with thunder or shouting. Sometimes it comes quietly, in an email that makes your whole world stop breathing. That was the night I stopped being sure of who we were. He kept staring at the screen, as if staring hard enough could make the words change. I remember standing there frozen, watching the color drain from his face. He wasn't angry yet, not even suspicious. He just looked lost. He said my name once, quietly, almost like a question. And that was when fear began to crawl up my spine. Not the fear of being caught, but the fear of being misunderstood, of something sacred being twisted into something ugly. I told him to refresh the page, to check the login, to make sure the site wasn't some scam. He did, and the words stayed the same. Possible relationship, not parent-child. He turned toward me slowly. I saw it in his eyes before he spoke. The question neither of us wanted to ask. How is that possible? I wanted to tell him it was a mistake, that DNA couldn't measure love that I didn't know. But I did know. I had always known. I whispered, "It must be wrong." He shook his head. "No, these things are pretty accurate." And then came the silence, the kind that fills the room and makes it hard to breathe. He didn't shout, not that night. He just stood up, closed the laptop, and said, "We'll talk about this later." But later never came in words. It came in distance. The next morning he left early. He didn't kiss me goodbye. He didn't even touch his coffee. The cup sat there, steam curling like a ghost between us. Emma was still asleep, unaware that her world had already shifted. I looked at her that morning the way you look at someone through glass. So close, yet unreachable. I wanted to hold her, but guilt built a wall between us. All day I replayed the past like an old film. Every birthday, every hug, every night she'd fallen asleep in my arms. None of it felt false. It was all real, painfully real. But the test didn't care about that. When my husband came home that evening, he didn't speak at first. He just set his keys down and said, "I ordered another test." I nodded, though my hands were trembling. It arrived a few days later. We took it together this time. Watched each other seal the samples, watched him write the names, watched the package leave our hands. I could tell he was already somewhere else, far away from the life we'd built. 2 weeks passed. 2 endless, unbearable weeks. Emma noticed, of course. She asked if something was wrong. I told her father was just stressed from work. She believed me. Or maybe she just wanted to. When the second results came in, he didn't wait for me to see them. He read them alone in his study, the door closed. I was in the kitchen when I heard the sound. Not a scream, not a crash, just a single, quiet sob. When I went to him, he was sitting at his desk, his hands shaking, the screen glowing in the dim light. He didn't look up when he said, "It's true." And that was it. Just those 2 words. I sat down beside him, my heart beating so hard it hurt. "Please, let me explain." "Explain what?" he said, his voice flat. "That she isn't mine. That you lied to me for 22 years. "It wasn't like that," I whispered. "You don't understand." "Then help me understand." And I couldn't. Not in that moment. Because every explanation sounded like an excuse, and every excuse sounded like betrayal. He got up and left the room. The door clicked softly behind him, and that sound stayed with me for days. After that night, the house became something else, half home, half stranger. He slept in the guest room. We spoke only about necessary things, the bills, the groceries, the dog. The love that had once filled every corner of our lives was replaced by silence that stretched wider each day. Emma started asking questions. She could sense something was wrong. One night, she came into my room and said, "Mom, why is Dad acting weird?" I told her it was just work stress again, but she didn't believe me this time. A few days later, I saw her at the computer, scrolling through old emails. She looked up when I entered the room and said, "Did we ever get our DNA results? Dad mentioned something." My hands went cold. I told her it wasn't important, just a silly ancestry thing. She nodded, pretending not to care, but that night she looked at me differently. Like she could sense the truth hiding behind my face. I barely slept. Every sound felt like a threat. The buzz of my phone, the creak of the floorboards. I kept waiting for the moment she'd find out, for the words that would finally shatter what little peace we had left. And when it came, it wasn't from me. It was from him. He told her. I heard their voices through the wall, his calm, hers breaking. The words blurred together, but I caught fragments not real. How could she, my mother? Then there was silence. A door slammed. Footsteps. A car starting. When I ran outside, the taillights were already disappearing down the street. I stood there barefoot on the cold concrete, my heart in my throat, knowing that the secret I had buried for decades had finally come alive, and it had taken everything with it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch, staring at the clock, listening to the silence that filled the house like fog. Every passing hour felt heavier, like time itself was punishing me. My husband didn't come out of his room. The light under his door stayed on all night. I kept checking my phone, hoping Emma would text, call, anything. But she didn't. By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I called her again and again, straight to voicemail. I left messages, first calm, then desperate. "Please, sweetheart, come home. We can talk. Please." No answer. When the sun rose, I got in the car and drove. I didn't even know where I was going. I just followed instinct. The same roads I'd driven her to school on, to dance practice, to her friends' houses. I stopped at the little cafe she used to love, the one with the green awning and the smell of cinnamon. Her car wasn't there. By the third stop, I was crying so hard I could barely see the road. Finally, just after noon, my phone buzzed. It was a text from her, 2 words. "Don't call." That was all. No explanation. No goodbye. Just a wall where my daughter used to be. I pulled over and sobbed until I couldn't breathe. It's strange, the way grief hits before loss is even final. The body knows when something sacred is gone. When I got home, my husband was sitting at the kitchen table. He didn't look up when I walked in. He just said, "She's staying with her friend. She doesn't want to see you." I asked him if he'd told her everything. He said she deserved to know. His voice was so calm, so certain. She's my daughter, I said. He looked up then, eyes tired and hollow. She. That broke me. I wanted to scream at him, to remind him of every scraped knee he'd kissed, every bedtime story, every photo on the walls. But I couldn't, because in his mind those moments had just turned to lies. I spent the next few days walking through the house like a ghost. Every room felt different, like it had absorbed our pain. Her laughter still echoed faintly in the walls, in the way the light hit the hallway. I couldn't bear to look at her empty room, so I closed the door. Then, on the third night, my husband finally asked the question I'd been dreading. Who is he? The name burned in my throat. I hadn't said it in years, but I said it anyway. He was a friend, I began slowly, from before. Before you and I got serious. He said nothing, just waited. I was young, I whispered. We had broken up for a few weeks. I made a mistake. I didn't even know I was pregnant until after we got back together. I could see the betrayal in his eyes turning into something colder. So you married me, knowing she wasn't mine? I married you because I loved you, I said. Because I wanted to build a life with you. Because you were the only person who made me feel safe. He looked away. And you thought lying would keep it that way? He wasn't wrong. I had spent 22 years building our life on a secret, convincing myself it was harmless. I told myself that love mattered more than blood, that truth could sometimes destroy what it was meant to protect. But I was wrong. He moved out a week later. Packed his things quietly, one box at a time. Didn't even take everything. Just enough to start over somewhere else. The morning he left, I stood at the window and watched his car disappear. The same car I used to watch leave every morning with a kiss and a wave, only this time there was no promise he'd come back. And just like that, it was me in the silence. For weeks I tried to reach Emma. I sent letters, texts, emails. Nothing. Her friends stopped answering me too. The world closed in. Then one afternoon she showed up. Unannounced, I heard the door open, and when I turned around, there she was, standing in the doorway, looking smaller somehow, but older too. Her eyes were red, but her face was calm. I came to get my things, she said. I wanted to run to her to hold her, but I didn't move. I knew she wouldn't let me. Emma, please. Don't, she said sharply. Don't call me that right now. Her words sliced through me. I just need to understand, she said after a moment. Did you ever plan to tell me? I wanted to, I whispered. Every day. But I was afraid. Afraid of what? Of losing me. Or of what people would think. Both, I said honestly. But mostly I was afraid you'd hate me. She looked away. I don't hate you. I just don't know who you are anymore. Then she went upstairs. I heard drawers opening, boxes shifting, the sound of her life being packed away. When she came back down, she stood at the door for a long moment. I used to think you were the most honest person I knew, she said softly. Now I don't even know if the stories you told me as a kid were true. And then she left. The door closed, and I knew this time she wasn't coming back. That night I sat in her room for hours. The smell of her shampoo lingered in the air. There were photos on the dresser. Her at 6 years old, her first recital, her graduation, moments frozen in time, untouched by the truth. I realized then that the DNA test hadn't just taken my husband or my daughter. It had taken the life I thought we had. Every memory now carried an echo of doubt. Every joy was shadowed by guilt. And the worst part wasn't losing them. The worst part was knowing I had done it to myself. After Emma left, the house no longer felt like a home. Every sound echoed. The ticking clock, the drip of the faucet, the hum of the refrigerator. I had never realized how loud emptiness could be. Days blurred into nights. I stopped cooking. I stopped opening the curtains. I'd sit by the window with my phone in my hand, scrolling through old pictures, family vacations, birthdays, Christmas mornings. We looked so happy, and maybe we were. At least I wanted to believe we were. But memories hurt when they're no longer shared. Sometimes, I'd still text her. Just small things. Hope you're eating okay. I love you. I miss you. She never replied. But I kept sending them anyway, like prayers tossed into the dark. It was sometime in early spring when I finally did something I'd avoided for decades. I looked for him. The man from before. I told myself it wasn't about rekindling anything. I just needed closure. Needed to look the past in the eye and finally understand what had started all this. It wasn't hard to find him. The internet makes ghosts easy to trace. He still lived in the same town, not far from where we'd met. Married now, children of his own. I stared at his photo on the screen for a long time. His face was older, softer around the edges, but the eyes were the same. The eyes I'd once fallen for, Before life taught me what falling really costs, I didn't plan to meet him. But one morning I got in my car and drove. It was a quiet street lined with trees. His house was small, neat, peaceful. I parked across from it, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I didn't even know what I'd say if he saw me. I almost drove away, but fate, or maybe guilt, had other plans. He came outside, just for a moment, to get the mail. He didn't see me right away, but when he did, his expression froze, then softened. He walked toward my car slowly, cautiously, like approaching a ghost. I rolled down the window. Hi, he said, uncertain. It's been a long time, too long, I said. There was a pause, full of things neither of us wanted to say. I saw the test results. I finally said, about our daughter. He nodded slowly. She reached out to me. My breath caught. She what? She found me online, he said quietly. A few weeks ago. We've talked? The words felt like a knife twisting deep inside. How is she? She's angry, he said, confused. But she's strong. She's trying to understand. Does she hate me? I asked, barely able to get the words out. He hesitated. She doesn't hate you. She just feels like you stole the truth from her. The tears burned behind my eyes. I thought I was protecting her. I didn't want her to grow up with the shame of not knowing where she came from. He sighed, looking at me with something that almost looked like pity. Maybe. But sometimes the truth is the only thing that can protect us. I wanted to scream at him, tell him he didn't understand what it's like to live with secrets that could tear your family apart. But deep down, I knew he was right. We stood there for a while, just looking at each other, two people bound by a past we couldn't undo. He told me he'd met Emma twice. Coffee once, lunch another time. He said she'd been polite but distant. She's not ready for more, he said. She just wanted to see where she came from. And then he added softly, she has your eyes. That broke me completely. I thanked him for talking to me, turned back to my car, and drove away before he could see me cry. On the way home, everything blurred. The trees, the road, the world. I just kept thinking about her sitting across from him, hearing his voice for the first time, wondering if she felt connected or betrayed. That night, I wrote her a letter, not a text, not an email, a real letter written by hand. It took me hours to finish. I told her everything, every truth, every mistake. How much I loved her father, how much I loved her, how terrified I'd been of losing everything. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I knew I didn't deserve it. I just wanted her to know that my choices weren't made out of malice. They were made out of fear and love, two things that often look the same until it's too late. I mailed it the next morning. Weeks passed. No reply. Until one evening, a small envelope arrived. My name written in her handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. It wasn't long, just a single sheet of paper. I got your letter. I'm not ready to talk yet, but I read every word. I hope one day I can understand why you did what you did. I'm not sure I can ever forgive you. But I still love you, that was it. I cried until I couldn't breathe. Because even though it wasn't forgiveness, it was something. A bridge, fragile and trembling, but real. In the months that followed, I learned to live in the ruins of what I'd built. My husband never came back. Emma didn't either, not fully. We spoke a few times, always careful, always distant. But she was alive, and she was finding her truth. Even if that truth didn't include me the way it once did. Some nights, I still light a candle in the kitchen window. Not because I believe it will bring anyone home, but because it reminds me of who I used to be. A woman who believed in love, in safety, in the power of small lights against big darknesses. The DNA test didn't just destroy my family. It revealed what was already broken, what I'd tried so hard to hide. And if I could go back, if I could undo every lie, every silence, I would. But life doesn't give you that mercy. It only gives you the truth. And sometimes that truth comes too late. It's been years now. The house feels different, softer somehow, like time smoothed its sharp edges. The walls don't echo anymore. They just listen. I've painted the kitchen, changed the curtains, planted lavender by the window, little things. Small attempts to make the silence kinder. People say time heals everything. I don't think that's true. Time doesn't heal. It teaches you how to live with what's broken. My husband never came back. We signed the papers quietly, without tears or shouting. He looked older, thinner, but his eyes were steady. We said goodbye in a courthouse hallway, two strangers who once shared a life. I watched him walk away, and for the first time I didn't chase him. I knew I'd already taken enough. Emma still keeps her distance. We talk sometimes. Birthdays, holidays. The calls are short, polite. Her voice still makes my heart ache. I listen to every word like it might be the last. She has a life of her own now, a job, friends, an apartment in the city. I see her in photos sometimes, smiling, standing next to people I don't know. She looks happy. Or at least at peace. Maybe that's all I can ask for. Sometimes I wonder if she's forgiven me. Probably not. But forgiveness isn't always a door that opens. Sometimes it's just a window that lets in enough light to see the path forward. I've stopped asking why the truth had to come out the way it did. Maybe it was always meant to. Maybe secrets rot when buried too long, and one way or another, they find their way to the surface. That little white envelope didn't destroy my family. It just revealed the fault lines that were already there. The cracks I ignored, the fears I buried under love and good intentions. If I could speak to the woman I was before it all, the one who laughed at dinner and thought she could keep everyone safe with a lie, I'd tell her the truth doesn't wait. It doesn't care if you're ready. It arrives when it must, and when it does, it demands everything. And yet, despite everything I've lost, I've learned something I never would have understood back then. Love isn't always about keeping people close. Sometimes it's about letting them go without asking them to come back. So now, when the evenings get quiet, I light that same candle in the kitchen window. Not as a signal, not as a plea, just as a reminder. That once there was warmth in this house. That once we were whole. And though everything changed in one night, I still believe some love never dies, it just changes shape. I still love her, I always will. And maybe, somewhere in her own way, she still loves me too.